Dan, Courtney, Brendan and Steve scored a cheap flat and a great location, but they've been experiencing paranormal activity since they moved in, and they're convinced they've disturbed a spirit or a lost soul who still lurks in the shadows of the house. And now they're so creeped out, they've called in an expert to help. Meet Jane Brebner, housewife, former top real estate agent, and intuitive psychic. Jane didn't realise she had psychic abilities until she was an adult.
It didn't really come to the fore until I was 28 and joined real estate. And we would go out on what's called caravan, where everybody goes and checks out the new houses. And I would get to the door and unknowingly I would just stop and feel the atmosphere in a house before I'd even walk inside it, and say to my colleagues, this is a separation. There's been fighting in this house. And he'd say, be quiet, Jane, we haven't told the others yet.
But all was not well with Jane. She developed a clot on her lung. While off work, her life was changed by an unforeseen meeting with a clairvoyant.
She invited me in and just looked across at me and said, have you been hearing voices? And it had only been happening for 4 days. And I burst into tears and said, yes, I have. I think I'm having a breakdown. And she just laughed and she said, you silly thing, you're clairvoyant.
Jane's not your typical psychic. Be warned, she only deals with the authentic stuff.
Certainly always I would say to people, tune in to what you're feeling. Be careful not to invent something that's not there. And that's the difference. A lot of people are fearful if they think, oh, it might be a ghost, and they'll create something that is not there.
So she was the perfect person to take a look at our flat. We weren't sure if the flatmate's house held dark secrets, whether they were really being plagued by an unsettled spirit, or if it was all down to bad plumbing, dodgy wiring and rotting piles. So My House, My Castle organised for Jane to visit the house and reveal its darkest secrets, if there were any.
The feeling that I get when I pick up in this house as I come through is an old feeling. It's a lady, an old lady that lived here. It's an older essence that's here, so by no means young. I can tell you that she's not going anywhere in a hurry. She's very familiar with this house. This is from the past. She likes to stay in this house. And she's being a little bit mischievous.
Based on Jane's reading of the house, we investigated further. The house was built in the 1920s and had only one owner until 1983, when it was bought and sold several times over the next few years. A widow had lived there for many years with her son, but he hadn't held on to the property after she died. This confirmed the flatmate's suspicion that the paranormal activity might be caused by someone who'd owned the house in the past.
I think she feels sort of misplaced now that she's I reckon she could be almost like a feeling of invasion. Why are you coming to my house? Why are you doing all this? Why are you disturbing me?
Jane was able to reveal some disturbing things about the spirit.
Now this is an interesting room, and I'm picking up that this lady was very vivacious. She was very ambitious and very stuck in her ways. And boy, if you cross this lady, look out.
So we can assume our old lady was alone in this house, bringing up her son for some time, and we have no evidence she remarried. Bringing up a child alone 60 or 70 years ago wasn't easy, so she'd have had to have been strong, independent and pretty tough. But you know, mothers and their sons. It might be why Brendan's all-boy room just down the hall is in a different realm to Courtney's.
The energy is conducive to new ideas. You do your homework properly, you make a great plan for your future, and 9 times out of 10 it's going to work if you do it in this room. Fabulous feeling. Awesome. Fabulous. You should sleep well here too.
I do.
Good.
We also discovered her son sold the property soon after her death, but never removed some of the items in the basement, and successive owners have added their own forgotten items to the pile. So, the old lady's son had sold the property swiftly after her death, and for nearly 20 years it had changed hands on average every 2.5 years. No wonder the atmosphere in the house was so charged.
It just becomes very uneasy, especially if you're at home alone and it's night time, and it just makes things more stressful and tiring, and I haven't slept properly for quite some time, so...
Poor Courtney. As the only girl in the flat, she seemed to be getting the worst of it, but maybe she only had herself to blame. When they moved in, she'd done a bit of DIY decorating, as girls do, and moved a mirror that the old lady might have left in the house.
Now, I understand there was a mirror here that used to be on this wall here, and you moved it over to this side. I can tell you that the lady that used to live here was really angry about this. She did not like you moving the mirror over to that wall. It was totally the wrong place for her. She really did not like it. So the friction in the air is able to be picked up. Also, I noticed the difference as I move towards the bathroom here. Once again, the energy changes, and connected to the anger, certainly the energy is a lot more intense and a lot more dense. And so it would be interesting to see if anything, perhaps there was sharp words exchanged or something like that.
Turns out the flatmates weren't imagining things. There really was a spirit in their house. But what could they do about it? In fact, what can you do if unexplained things start happening at your place? Meet Father Bernard Kiley. He's parish priest at St. Patrick's Cathedral in Auckland City.
When it comes to blessing a house, we believe God is everywhere. We believe that God is present in all things and in all people. But at the same time, by having a ritual, we're increasing our own awareness of God's presence and love. By having a ritual, it actually highlights the importance of the person.
May your holy angels encompass the walls of this home. May peace be within them. So we bless the walls of your house.
Part of the blessing itself in our tradition includes signs and symbols like water and candles. Water is a universal symbol of cleansing, but also of life. So in many ways, when a place is blessed, it's acknowledging a transition from one use or user to another. Amen. When somebody dies in a home, we're often invited to come and bless the room and indeed the whole house. The various cultural groups that are a part of our society in New Zealand would also include that as a part of the way they do things.
And if you haven't got access to a man of the cloth, well, don't worry. You can always scare the spirits away, do-it-yourself style. But how do you know if you have a bona fide paranormal problem or pesky ghost on your hands? Do objects move round on their own? Do you have a strange feeling of being watched? Do you see balls or orbs floating around? First, check for natural causes. If you feel water dripping on your head, check for burst pipes in the ceiling. Scratching in the roof or under the floorboards. Make sure it isn't rats. Do you think you can smell the perfume of a dead friend or relative? Well, make sure it's not a piece of their clothing that you're wearing, or maybe a watch strap that still has their fragrance on it. The trouble with ghosts is that they're so last century, so stuck in the past. They could be hanging around for years because they've got some unfinished business that they want to settle with you. If they're really annoying you, ghosts will sometimes take instructions. Will you stop doing that? Thank you. Look, guys, I hate to tell you this, but you're dead. You got to move on. Don't be afraid. You're supposed to be the scary ones. Look, we're going to go into the light where there's peace and other dead people. Ready? Ready? Go! Coming up, our old lady pulls out all the stops.
She's definitely a lot more angrier. She's throwing things and turning on taps.
The flatmates switch from beer to spirits.
I don't think she wants to leave. I think she's just got some connection to the house.
And they're faced with some desperate decisions.
I can't sleep, and I'm almost ready to just move back to my parents.